Today we've got a big question to tackle. Should you buy or rent here in Cincinnati, Ohio? Whether you're a first-time home buyer, a renter considering your next move, or you're just curious about the real estate market here in Cincinnati, then you're in the right place. We're diving into the pros and the cons of buying and renting here in Cincinnati as we head into 2025. And at the end of this video, I'll share a real-life example of buying versus renting with specific numbers so you can make an informed decision about what's best for you. So let's get started. I'm Angela Evans with Cincinnati Ohio Living, and I love helping people just like you make a smooth move here in the Queen City. If you want to connect, you can call or text me at 513-951-3584. All right, so before we dive into the buying versus renting debate, let's set the stage here for what the current market is like in Cincinnati. In recent years, the market here in the Queen City has been very competitive, but we have started to see a little bit of a shift in the second half of 2024 as we head into 2025. While there's still technically a shortage of homes available, there are also less buyers in the market right now. We're starting to see more price reductions, more days on market, which means that instead of houses, going under contract within less than a week, we're starting to see things sit for a couple weeks, sometimes up to a couple months. And so that's kind of one of our first cues that the market is starting to shift here in Cincinnati. So as of late 2024, the median home value here in Cincinnati is right around $285,000, which is about $175 per square foot. That's up over 5% from last year. But home values are no longer skyrocketing like they were during the pandemic. So if you're considering buying, we are entering a less competitive market. It's still competitive, but not like it was during the pandemic, and can provide some stability for you to decide if it's going to be the right time for you to buy or not. Renting has also seen quite an increase here in the last few years in Cincinnati, with several articles over the last year especially naming Cincinnati as the hottest rental market. They've been consistently in the top 10, top 20 in the country for the most competitive rental markets. That being said, it's still like 25% lower than other large cities and just is in general more affordable here in the Midwest. It's a more affordable option for some people who maybe don't want to be locked into a 30-year mortgage, or for those that maybe don't have the funds to put any money down. Now let's break down the pros and the cons of buying a home here in Cincinnati. So let's start with the good stuff. Building equity. When you buy a home, you're investing in your future. Every monthly mortgage payment you make is essentially building your equity and leading to long-term financial growth. Instead of throwing money away on rent, your payments are contributing to an asset that you own. Pro number 2, stability and predictability. With a fixed rate mortgage, your monthly payments typically aren't going to change over time, with the exception of if there's a tax assessment that raises or lowers the value of the home that you're being taxed at, which is unlike rent, which obviously can fluctuate from year to year. In cities like Cincinnati, where rents have kind of skyrocketed over the last few years during the pandemic especially, owning a home can give you some financial stability. Pro number 3, freedom and control. Home ownership means that you can customize and renovate the space to fit your needs. So whether you want to update the kitchen, renovate a bathroom, add a patio or a pergola in your backyard, maybe you want to fence it in or do a little pond. The bottom line is you have full control over your property. Now, I will say one caveat here though is if you live in a neighborhood that does have a homeowners association, then there are going to be likely some restrictions there as far as what you can do on the exterior of your home. You may not be able to put in a pool in that particular neighborhood, or you may not be able to fence in your yard the way that you want to. So that is just something to consider when you're looking to buy a home. And pro number 4 is the potential for the property value appreciation. Cincinnati's been a really hot market the last few years, and while prices are starting to stabilize, there's still potential for appreciation, especially in growing neighborhoods like College Hill, Pleasant Ridge, Over the Rhine, and even suburbs like Westchester and the Mason area. If you buy in the right spot, your home's value could continue to appreciate over time, ultimately giving you more equity. So now moving on to the not so positives of owning your own home. Con number one is the upfront cost. Buying a home comes with significant upfront costs typically. Think down payment, closing costs, moving expenses, things like that. In Cincinnati, a typical down payment amount is about 10 to 20%, although there are loans that you can get at 0% down. Usually VA loans offer that. There are some FHA loans, and sometimes you can get grant assistance from the state as well to help with the down payment costs. But in general, most people are probably putting around 10% to 20% down when buying a home here. Con number two, maintenance and repairs. Unlike renting, where your landlord is responsible for the maintenance of the building or the home that you live in, as a homeowner, you're on the hook for all of the upkeep. Whether it's a furnace that stops working in the middle of winter, or a leaky roof, or an unexpected plumbing expense, you'll need to plan for these types of unexpected expenses to be able to keep your home in good, livable condition. Unless you bought a condominium type property where all the exterior maintenance is taken care of and you pay a monthly HOA fee towards those expenses. Con number three is the lack of flexibility. So once you have committed and purchased a home, it's not as easy to move as it would be if you were renting a home or an apartment. If you're unsure about your long-term plans in Cincinnati, buying a home might limit your flexibility, especially if you need to relocate quickly for work or personal reasons. If you have some questions about the market here in Cincinnati, I'd love to connect with you. You can book a Zoom call and we can chat face-to-face just like this. You can find that link in the description box below. All right, now back to it. So we just covered the pros and cons of buying a home in Cincinnati, and now we're going to cover the pros and cons of renting in Cincinnati. Pro number one is lower upfront costs. When you rent, you avoid the hefty upfront down payment and closing costs. Instead, you typically just need your first month's rent and a security deposit. This makes renting a more desirable option for those who might not have much cash saved up. Pro number two, flexibility. So home ownership flexibility was one of the cons. On renting, that is one of the positive aspects. It offers a level of flexibility that home ownership just can't match. If your life situation changes and you need to move abruptly, or you need to relocate for a job, it's much easier to break a lease than to sell a home. In Cincinnati, you'll find plenty of rental options that cater to short-term stays as well, if you know you're only going to be here in the area for maybe 6 months to a year. And pro number three is no maintenance costs. So as a renter, maintenance is the landlord's problem, not yours. From fixing appliances to taking care of the landscaping and snow removal, you typically don't have to worry about the hassle of repairs. This can be a huge relief, especially if you're really busy or you just don't want to have the additional responsibility to get those repairs done. But renting does also come with some downsides. Con number one is you're not building any equity. When you rent, your monthly payments are essentially just going to your landlord's pocket. Now, they have expenses too, but that doesn't matter to you at this point. Renting isn't building any long-term wealth for you, and it just doesn't offer the long-term financial growth benefit that homeownership does. Con number two, rent increases. As we discussed, rent in Cincinnati has been on the rise over the last few years, and while it's starting to stabilize a little bit more, their cost of rent can realistically still go up each year, which ultimately leaves you with less control over your housing costs. And con number three, limited control. As a renter, you're stuck with the rules of your landlord, whether that's restrictions on pets or changes being made to the space, or not being able to personalize the home the way that you would like. Renting doesn't offer the same level of freedom that home ownership does in that aspect. Okay, so after all of that, how do you decide what's best for you? Here's a breakdown of what I would consider. First, think about your long-term plans. If you're planning to stay in Cincinnati for a while and want the stability of a fixed mortgage, buying could be a great option. On the other hand, if your job or lifestyle might take you elsewhere, renting offers some flexibility to move without the hassle of selling a property. Next, consider your financial situation. If you've got a steady job, a good credit score, and enough savings for a down payment, buying might make sense for you. But if you're early in your career and saving up for other goals, renting may be a better way to go. Finally, think about your comfort level with home maintenance. If you're someone who loves DIY projects and wants to take on a fixer-upper, buying could be exciting. But if you're not ready to deal with repairs and maintenance, renting lets you skip that responsibility. So as a rental property owner myself, I would be remiss to not mention this third option to you. Maybe you don't like the idea of renting and throwing away your money monthly, but you also don't quite feel like you have the cash saved up that you would need for expenses and things for home ownership. So a third option would be to buy a multifamily property. Maybe that's a duplex, a triplex, or a quad. They are really common here in Cincinnati, and they are great investments. And one thing that I always regret that my husband and I didn't do was buy a multifamily house right from the beginning. You can live in one unit and rent out the other. And yes, you are going to have some additional responsibilities there, but you're also essentially getting your mortgage paid for by the other renters in the units. So it really is a good option to consider if you are responsible and maybe you have some extra time to devote to scheduling things if they need to be done, or cutting the grass, things like that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If that's something you're considering here in Cincinnati, like I said, I personally own rental property, and I'd love to connect with you and help you decide if that's the right move for you here in the Queen City. So make sure you reach out. You can call me at 513-951-3584, or you can email ange.sells.cincy@gmail.com. All right, so now as promised, I'm going to give you an actual breakdown of what renting versus buying can look like, and hopefully that will help give you a better idea of the numbers at the end of the day. If you purchase a $300,000 house and you bring a down payment of about 20%, which is $60,000, your closing costs are going to be somewhere around $2,500. So the total upfront money that you would need to close is about $62,500. So what I calculated is with a 7% interest rate on a 30-year fixed loan. Now, again, there are different types of loans offered. Some that you can get, like when I purchased my first home, we got a 97.3. So we put 3% down on our home. Now, at the time, that home was only $111,000. Today, that same home is worth $250,000. So it's a little different, but there are loan options out there. So that's another important thing. Make sure you check in with me, and I can refer you to lenders in the area that might be able to explain and help you with some different options there. All right, so your monthly payment for a $300,000 house, if you're putting 20% down, is going to be about $1,516 a month. Your insurance is going to be about $150 a month, and your taxes, depending on where you are in the greater Cincinnati area, are going to range from 1 to 1.5% of the purchase price. So in this scenario, I just put $300. Your maintenance, I just factored in $250 a month. That's just for general maintenance. Your trash, about $35 a month. Your water and sewer, $150 a month. And then, which is probably on the high end, depending on how many people are going to be living in the home. And then your gas and electric is probably going to be about $250 a month. So your total maintenance costs monthly are going to be about $685. So when you look at the overall 5-year mark, if you purchase a home, you will have made $118,000 roughly in payments. You will have spent about $41,000 on maintenance, and your total costs are about right under $160,000. Now, in that time, though, you've also paid down about $15,000 worth of principal, and your home has likely appreciated in those 5 years, which has given you almost $48,000 additional equity. So your total equity after 5 years is about $63,000. All right, so on the flip side, if you would rent, you have to put very little down. You have to provide your first month's rent essentially in a security deposit. Let's say your monthly payment for this size home, which is probably a 3-bed, 2-bath, is going to be about $2,000 a month. Plus you're going to have insurance costs, I'm going to factor in about $25 a month for renter's insurance. You will not have any maintenance costs, but you will still have to do your trash, your water and sewer, and your gas and electric generally if you are renting a single family home. So those are going to total up right around $450 a month. So in 5 years, you will have paid $121,500. You will have paid about $26,000 in maintenance, which is your trash, your water, electric. You will have zero equity. So honestly, even if you are thinking about just being here in Cincinnati for maybe just a couple years, it still probably makes sense to buy a home. Since we aren't in that ultra competitive market right now where homes are going for $20,000, $40,000 over asking the first day on the market, your home is likely going to continue to appreciate, not as much as it has been the last 5 years or so, which was an unusual rate of appreciation, but still at a steady, 3% per year appreciation. Another thing to consider is if you were to buy and live in a multifamily home and rent out the other parts, even if you were going to relocate, maybe it was temporarily or maybe it's permanently, you could continue to own that property and rent it out and just have passive income from that. Now, you would have the cost of a property manager since you would no longer be residing there or even in the city or state maybe, but it's still going to be a great way to build wealth and help you grow financially. And one thing I want to note on the renting is that here I factored in renting a single family home for $2,000 a month. Now, when I pulled up the current data for homes that are listed for rent in Cincinnati at this time. So in the last 6 months, 117 properties have been leased through the MLS, single family homes here in Cincinnati. And those were like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, about 1,800 square feet. And the median rent price was $2,275. So I'm actually being a little generous on my model here of saying $2,000 a month. Because likely you are going to be spending more than that. Just depends on the size home that you're wanting to rent or apartment. So apartments.com shows a 1-bedroom to a 4-bedroom house ranging from an average rent of about $1,300 a month to almost $3,000 a month. One thing I like about this site too is that it also lists like different neighborhoods in the city and gives you the average rent and the average square feet. So you kind of have an idea. So you can see, if you're renting in Westwood, it's going to be about $850 a month. And that I can verify because we have an apartment rented for that right now. So in Westwood, you're going to be at about $850 a month for a 638 square foot apartment. And then in downtown Cincinnati, you're going to be more like $1,500 a month for about 720 square foot apartment. So if you enjoyed this video and you know someone that would benefit from the information I provided here today, go ahead and share this with them. I would love to help somebody else and to have the opportunity to connect with them to figure out if buying or renting makes sense for them here in the Queen City. Okay, so what do you think? Do you have any questions or comments on that example that I just gave you? I'd love to hear from you. So make sure you drop a comment below with your question or reach out using my contact information in the description box below. So hopefully overall this video helped you weigh the pros and the cons of buying versus renting here in Cincinnati. Each situation is different, and if you just want to talk through buying versus renting, make sure you reach out to me because I'd love to help you. And if you like this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up and hit subscribe and tap the bell for notifications. That way this video can reach more people considering buying or renting here in Cincinnati just like you.